Hello, welcome to Amarillo Police Department's Sexual Harassment Prevention and Investigation Workshop. The purpose of this presentation today is to inform you about the risk of sexual harassment, how to prevent it, and how to investigate it. This workshop presentation seeks to guide management in prevention and investigation of the sexual harassment. So, just to let you know, I'm going to be handing out this little packet right here that's going to kind of go through everything that I'm talking about. At the end of each topic, I've got a pop quiz that's got a question for you. They're all at the very back here. So if you'll follow along, fill these out, take this off, put your name in, and we're going to put it in a little drawing to win a gift card to Academy. So that's a little bit of incentive for you all to engage and kind of listen to what I'm going to tell you today. Okay, the biggest impediment to victims coming forward is fear for their job and fear that they're going to be punished. What we're dealing with today here at the Amarillo Police Department is sexual harassment. It's a risk. You know, you guys go out every single day and risk your lives for us. You put your life on your line for your community, for your family, and we appreciate that. We are so grateful for everything that you do for us. But we also need to inform you that there are other risks out there, not just what you're going on and dealing with when you put your uniform on and you leave, and you're dealing with criminals, and you're dealing with different sorts of issues that put you in harm's way. This is a different kind of risk. So, my name is Amy Cruz. I am with MAG Consulting Firm. I've been in the legal field for about a decade now. I decided to go ahead and start my own firm about 5 years ago, and I specialize in risk management. So I go around to different government entities like you guys, and I let you know what you need to do to reduce these kinds of risks in your environment. What we're going to do today I've broken it down, so we're going to define what the risk is, we're going to identify it, we're going to figure out how to cope with it, and then we're going to plan to prevent it. First of all, more than 11,700 sexual harassment cases were filed in 2010 with the EEOC. In that same year, an additional 12,700 cases resulted in $48 million recovered with different parties. So in Amarillo, as you all know, we've got our first captain, Miss Elizabeth Brown. Give her a round of applause. Elizabeth worked her way up. Has been with the Amarillo Police Department for over a decade and is our first female captain. If you all did not know this, a pretty good indication of how your police department is situated as far as male and female, there are only 7.12% of females in your police department. Now, what we're going to do is we're defining what sexual harassment is. So the EEOC says sexual harassment is unwelcome sexual advances. It's a request for a favor and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual manner. So why is this important? Why are we here? Why does this even matter, right? Well, it matters because it's against the law, and it can cause emotional damage, and it can also cause monetary damage. For example, one of the latest cases, this is back in 2009, witness, this is Crawford versus Nashville, 2009. A witness in a sexual harassment investigation was later fired. His name is Crawford. Crawford was fired along with other witnesses after reporting the sexual-based behavior of a newly hired employee relations director. So get that. It's an employee relations director who is being witnessed committing sexual harassment. Those are the people that you're supposed to be able to go to when you come across these kinds of issues. But instead, listen to this. Crawford's case, Crawford was afraid to say anything, but finally did, and then was fired by this person. Once this case made it all the way to the Supreme Court. Once it got there, the decision was stated that it was unlawful for an employer to discriminate against an employee who has made charges, to testify, assisted, or participated in any manner in a proceeding. So, we're here at this place now, and so I'm going to, like I said before, just give you a little bit of a pop quiz. So, after this section, I just want to know what percentage of women are in the Amarillo Police Department. Don't answer me. Fill out your form. Remember, go to your back sheet, fill that out. And now that we've kind of covered what sexual harassment is, I'm going to discuss with you how to identify sexual harassment. A lot of people think that it can only happen to women, and that is not true. Men can be sexually harassed by women as well. And in preparing for this speech, I talked to my husband, and he told me, if a woman was hitting on me, I'd probably find it flattering. I would think it was funny. But those are different kinds of situations, right? So here it is. The way sexual harassment works, there's two kinds of sexual harassment. There is the quid pro quo, which is the sexual harassment that is conditional, which means that I don't think my husband would think it would be so funny if his boss came up to him and said, you must perform this sexual act in order to keep your job. Now, so that's quid pro quo. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Actually, it is, if you want to keep your job, then you're going to do this act. That is against the law. You cannot do that. Now, the part that he probably thinks is funny is what we consider the hostile environment, which is, it's less blatant. It's not like, oh, you're going to get fired if you don't do this. Instead, it's touches. It's a slight little feeling someone's hair, coming up behind them and touching them. It's the comments about someone's attire, comments about someone's body in a sexual nature, something that makes you feel really uncomfortable. And so nowadays, with the LGBT and men in relationships with other men and women in relationship with other women, everybody is in a situation right now and in a situation to be at risk. Which means that just because you are a gay man does not mean that you cannot be sexually harassed by another man. And if you're a gay woman, does not mean you cannot be sexually harassed by another gay woman. The law is the law. You cannot be talked to this way in this environment. Now, what do? What is we're here with managers, so employee liability. How it works, there's 4 different types. There's a supervisor harassment of an employee, which is tangible. And then there's the supervisor harassment of an employee that's non-tangible, harassment by coworkers, and even harassment by a third party. I didn't know that, okay? If you are working at a bank, and obviously we're in a police department, but if you're working at a bank and a prestigious client comes in and talks about your nice legs and talks about what he'd like to do to you, you can actually, your employer for allowing that can get in trouble. So what a lot of companies do is they actually have insurance for these kinds of incidences. Not everything is going to lead to a case being filed in court. Not everything, we're going to get to that a little bit later, kind of how things play out. Not everything is going to be a lawsuit. Not everything is going to be that detrimental. But it's very important to know that in this situation that there is liability insurance for the company. So I'm sure the city, I hadn't really talked to the city manager about this, but I'm sure that there's some sort of policy as far as insurance is concerned that covers these kinds of things. That does not mean that it is okay, but it, like I said before, there were almost 13,000 cases filed and gone to court in 2010. So you got to keep in mind that this stuff is happening all the time. And if you're a small business, it's a good idea. We're obviously in the city of Amarillo, but it's a good idea to have some sort of coverage for yourself to protect yourself, because as an employer, you cannot control what other people do. But we're going to figure out how to prevent these kinds of things and what to do if it does happen, right? Okay, so pop quiz. Go to your nifty little sheet. If somebody is touching you, what kind of sexual harassment is that? Do not answer. Fill out your paper. Okay. So now that we've covered, that type of, the types of sexual harassments, let's go ahead and talk about what we need to do if this actually happens. Okay? So, Jane Johnson comes and has been physically touched by a coworker and is feeling threatened and is suffering from sexual harassment. Okay, he is making comments about her clothing. He's making comments about a sexual nature, things that he'd like to do to her. He's sending her messages, etc., etc. So, what do we do? Captain Brown, this is what we're going to do. The process starts as due process, right? We all know due process. I was in the legal field. You all are police officers. You are very aware of that. But let's just break it down a little bit. The basic rights include informing the alleged harasser of the concerns raised and allowing an opportunity for them to respond before any disciplinary action is taken. So what that means is that Miss Johnson, who has filed her suit or her complaint against Mr. Jones, he gets a chance to defend himself before he's actually charged with anything or dismissed or punished for anything else, right? Also, that everyone needs to be treated fair and equal. There needs to be a prompt investigation, and there also needs to be confidentiality, and we need to avoid any conflicts of interest. What does that mean? That means that Captain Brown, who is best friends with Captain Jones, and if Captain Jones is the one being accused, and Captain Brown is the supervisor, she cannot be in charge of this investigation. There is a conflict of interest. Okay? So, how's the procedure? How do we go? It needs to be made clear that the conduct is prohibited. There needs to be, the person that's brought the complaint needs to be made assured that there's no retaliation. Okay? And, for example, if I don't feel comfortable with Captain Jones or, who's a male, and I want to talk to a female, that is completely okay. Okay? And if it is the opposite way, like we discussed before, males, can be sexually harassed as well. If they feel more comfortable talking to another male, that is completely okay. That is their right. It's just, human nature. Sometimes people just feel more comfortable with the same sex discussing these kinds of issues that are very personal. They're very emotional as well. So, all of this needs to be held, confidentiality is one of the biggest things. There needs to be a prompt investigation again. And then there needs to be assurance to the person the complainant, that something's going to be done, that you have a voice and that it is being heard, and we're going to take care of this. Now, no promises of anything needs to be made, but they need to be reassured that this is being handled in the proper manner. So, there's an intake manager. So we could have this person in our HR department, for example, who's going to take this information down. And this person is trained to refer to a policy and to help the employee contact the right person. So if there's going to be another complaint filed, this is your HR person, right? Obviously, this person needs to be sensitive. Make sure, again, confidentiality, okay? Attentive, and make sure they get the facts and remain impartial. So then we've got our investigator. Our investigator has to be somebody that is neutral, and experienced in this type of thing, has knowledge and training in sexual harassment policies and guidelines, who is credible, who can make tough decisions, who's also fair, sympathetic, and will take action immediately. So what do we do now? We've got guidelines, okay? Who are we going to interview when this happens, when this is brought up? Well, first of all, we're going to interview the complainant. We're going to interview the harasser. And then we're going to interview any witnesses who saw this happening, or anybody who the complainant has gone to, or even the harasser has gone to talk about these instances. So let's just say that Mr. Jackson was on Miss Jones making some comments about her hair or her, in a sexual nature, something derogatory. And he runs over to, Bob and tells him, hey, I just said this to her, and I could see, the blush, her face was blushing, and she's really, yada, 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 how all of that goes down. That guy you're going to talk to. And then, after the complainant has probably gone to her closest girlfriend or his closest guy friend and said, you know what, I just got talked to in the most demeaning sexual innuendos. I feel very uncomfortable. I don't know what to do. You're going to talk to that person as well. Okay? So when you're talking to the complainant, though, you got to figure out who all was involved. That's going to help you kind of figure out your road. Exactly what happened, when it happened, where it happened, and if there was a pattern. So if this person says this always happens at the end of his morning shift on Tuesdays, I don't know what he does, or this happens once a week, or he's doing this not on a regular basis, it's maybe once a month. But those are the kinds of things that need to be taken into consideration. They also need to know if there's any evidence. Okay, so what are we talking about? Evidence, we're talking about nasty emails, threatening emails, notes, text messages, Facebook messages, Instagram messages, anything that shows that this is going on, notes, anything tangible, that kind of evidence needs to be taken into consideration. Now, when you're interviewing the alleged harasser, what are you going to do? You're going to ensure them that this is going to be a fair proceeding, okay? At this point, this is all alleged material, correct? So, you're going to say, hey, XYZ, I'm not saying you're guilty of anything. I'm saying this is what's been brought to me, and this is your opportunity to respond. Now, the details of the allegations will come up. They have an opportunity to respond, and then they also they can admit it. I mean, those are the options kind of going forward in that. So, after that, there's going to be a report that's going to have everybody's name, the date the complaint was filed, the type of complaint it was, what office, if you're, depending on what precinct you're in, any of the background information, just saying, this is one of our elite captains who's been here for 10 years and never has anything wrong with his record, and this is the complainant is this. So just a little bit of information to kind of let you know who these characters are, just to give you a little bit more detail. Obviously, the summaries of what the allegations were and what your findings were. What you found out, what you figured out. So did she say that he did this? And he said, yes, I did. So now what do we do? Okay, so applying the appropriate remedy it can go from anywhere from a formal apology, a transfer or a reassignment of duties, a disciplinary action, or termination. So that's kind of this is where our investigation stage, this is what we're going through to kind of get to the end, right? So pop quiz time. Pull out your handy little papers. Go to the back. What is considered evidence? No answers, remember? We're going to fill out our paper. Okay. So, now that I've shown you how to handle a complaint, now I'm going to cover how we will prevent one. This is kind of the part that seems like it would be common sense, but it's not. Obviously, the first case that I showed you when we first started our workshop is of a an employee relations director who should know better than to fire people after they have been pointed out for sexual harassment. That's common sense, right? We know that. We should know that. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you a few things that we need as far as common sense are concerned, just because I'm here to inform you. First of all, we need to have an understanding of relevant law. So, my definition earlier, the EEOC, there's no gray. Obviously, there is gray in the law, but it states what this stuff is and what you cannot do in the different types of harassment. So you need to understand that. You're in a management position. You need to know if somebody comes up to you and says, I like your toenail polish, that's not sexual harassment. So if there's another comment about possibly wanting someone's toenail polish and toes to do something to them in a different manner, then we can go. That's you have to know what can and cannot be said, right? So also, what I understand you already have is a well publicized and developed policy. So APD has a very detailed policy. I'm not going to go into that. But as managers, you have access to that. And it's good to know those things. You need to have those resources. Have this outlined with you in your desk drawer with the policy. Have a little binder together that's going to have all of this information that's going to be like, oh, hang on. When I do my interview, I need to do this. Oh, here's the policy. It says this. Here's the procedures. I need to do this. Also, we're doing it right now. Training. You can't get enough of training. It's a refresher. I really appreciate you guys bringing me in here to be able to talk to you about all this stuff. There needs to be, like I said before, that investigation procedure that I just went over. If that's something that I don't think that you have right now, I know that you have a policy, but the procedures of the investigation, it wouldn't be a bad idea, Captain Brown, if you went and talked to the chief about something like that, or head of HR, or I can go in and talk to them about putting something like that in place for Amarillo Police Department. And my pop quiz after this section, because we are wrapping it up, is: do you have a current policy in place? Pop quiz, answer right here. Do not answer me, okay? So, we're getting ready to wrap things up, guys. So I really appreciate you sticking with me through this. Just to kind of wrap up, I just want to let you know that, this risk, like I said at the beginning, is different than any of the risks that you deal with out in the field. And I and our community appreciates everything that you do for us, your sacrifices, your, you go out at night, you fight the bad guys, you put yourself in harm's way, and we appreciate that. And my job is to come here and to talk to you about those kinds of risks that you should not have to deal with when you come to work. You should just worry about what you're going out into to protect and serve, not about these kinds of things. So it's my job to come here, get that information into your head, let you know how to take care of your people, and that's why we have me here. So we've learned how to define sexual harassment, identify it, cope with it, and then how we're gonna plan to prevent it. Now, Nelson Mandela said something very great, which is: the more informed you are, the less arrogant and aggressive you are. So knowledge is such a soothing and comforting thing to know that you have all this information now. I hope that this goes with you. Again, I thank you so very much for the opportunity. I hope that this information reduces any risk here at Amarillo Police Department. And I want you to know that I'm available for any other questions. Now, if you make sure that you fill out your pop quiz, there's those 4 questions at the back. Put your name on it. If you got them all right, we're going to put you in a drawing for a gift card. And I just, again, thank you for your service. And please contact me if you have any questions. Thank you.